The power of silence after a breakup. I'm going to talk to you about that and answer some of the most common questions and doubts about the subject as well. Basically, it's the no contact rule after a breakup, and I'm going to talk to you about why it works and answer some questions that people often ask. Number one, silence after a breakup oftentimes is the only way to be heard. And if you've begged and pleaded with your ex, then you know that's the truth. It's as though your words have little to no power or leverage in that moment. And part of it is because your ex has almost certainly been thinking about this for a long time. This isn't just something that came up yesterday. It's something that they have probably been wrestling with for weeks, months, maybe even years. And so when you try to talk them out of it or talk them into staying or show them how hurt you are, it usually falls on deaf ears because they've already had those conversations in their mind. They've already gone over those things. They've already stayed in the relationship maybe longer than they felt they should. And they've thought, I'll just give it one more weekend. I'll give it one more month and I'll see if it gets better. And so they have already debated the topic. So when you start talking to them, you are going against someone who is far more experienced with the conversation than you are. And so that's one of the reasons you don't have much impact on them. And the whole process of a breakup, when someone breaks up with you, basically being the one to say, I don't want to be with you anymore, I don't want this relationship with you anymore, and you're the one who still wants it, that whole process lowers attraction. And the reason they wanted the breakup was because attraction had fallen. People will sometimes say, no, that's not true. Mine just said it's because they really need to work on themselves. That's just a breakup excuse. It means nothing. What does that even mean? They're going to work on themselves. Why does that mean they have to break up with you? It doesn't. If attraction was higher, it wouldn't matter what the issue was. It wouldn't matter if they'd committed themselves to learning juggling so they could perform in a circus. If attraction was high enough, they would stay with you. These things we do in our lives only cause us to need a supportive partner more. So that's just really a vague excuse that they think is so personal that you couldn't argue with it. And they hope that you'll just kind of go away and make it easy on them. And so they're saying something, I just need to work on myself. I can't be in a relationship right now. Well, why not? We are all working on ourselves constantly. It doesn't mean that you have to break and destroy a relationship, especially a committed one, a marriage or something like that. And so being silent is actually being aware of the situation because your words are going to do very little, especially in that moment. In the future, at some point, your words might have impact again, especially if they've realized you're strong enough to stay away. Because a lot of times what they're concerned about right after they break up with you is, will you leave them alone? Will you actually give them the breakup? Or are they going to see from you that crazy ex behavior that people often talk about, and sometimes even arrogantly because they kind of like it. They kind of like being able to brag, I have a stalker, or he won't leave me alone, or she won't leave me alone, or whatever, because it makes them feel like they are so attractive the other person can't stay away. And so there's some arrogance in it too. And you definitely don't want to look like you are beneath them, that you are less attractive. You don't want to emphasize that. And the more that you try to talk to them in that situation, it just makes them feel more of a disconnect that, wow, you really don't get it. And I really don't want to be with you right now, because the begging, the pleading, the being around them when they're telling you that they don't want to be around you right now, that is actually continuing to lower attraction. And so it's basically a vicious cycle that will continue to make things worse until you back off, and then you can stop the bleeding and there is some hope. So silence is really the only way you can be heard at some point with this person. Number two, it triggers second guessing and doubt in your ex when you go silent, because if they anticipated that you would object and beg and plead and jump through all these hoops just trying to get them to consider getting back together with you, and then you don't, it pushes back against the idea that they are more attractive than you. You just want them so bad and they just want to be away from you. It basically allows them not to go that far in their mind. They see you as having dignity, as being able to live without them, strong enough to stay away, and it can actually help attraction rise again. It doesn't take much, and they start wondering if the breakup was really what they should have done, because a lot of times they are still in a place where they care about you tremendously. And it's sort of like 70 or 80% of them wants to be with you, but that 20%, that 30% in today's world where we don't value committed relationships enough, if there's any little bit of doubt, the person just thinks they have to do something about it. They have to bail. And usually when they get away from you and you're silent, it makes them miss intimacy with you. When you have a relationship with some history and some shared experiences, romantic times, inside stories, inside jokes, that's something that when they don't have you, they can miss. And it can cause them to see the relationship with more appreciation and even alarm them that you could get away, that you could move on and be with someone else and they could not get you back. And that makes them wonder, was this a mistake? Do I need to maybe try again? Do I need to maybe reach out to them and try to keep them close to me while I figure this out? And that gives you an opportunity to reattract them if it's in person. And I'll get more into that later. Before I get to number 3, get my new $7 reunion blueprint. That's right, it's only $7. It's for people who have been broken up with and you really want to find solid ground and a direction toward getting your ex back to do the things that will help you be more attractive to get them back. It's only $7. It's called the Reunion Blueprint. You can get it at reunionblueprint.com. The link is in the description below. If you're married, I have a free mini course on saving your marriage, because marriage is different than just a dating relationship. So the link to that is marriageradio.com, which is also in the description below, but that's what you would need to do. Thank you for your support and listening to my commercial. Number 3, people in your situation often worry that if you go into no contact, if you stay silent, that you will be forgotten. But that is an unfounded worry, because your ex doesn't have amnesia. They can remember you. They do remember you. It's that they don't want to be with you right now. And so if you try to be with someone when they don't want you in that moment, it only makes them see that they don't want you even more. It's reminding. It's sort of like if you are full of food and you don't want to eat anymore, and someone's like, no, here, take another bite, and they're trying to force feed you and you're nauseous. It's that kind of feeling. And so the best thing you can do is back off. It helps them to remember you, actually, because they notice that absence. And they basically, because of the way that their mind works, they will remember mostly the good times, because you can't just drop away from someone and not miss them. You have emotional intimacy, and the way that the chemicals work in your mind, dopamine, oxytocin, and others, it will cause them to remember you by you not being there. It actually makes it more difficult on them when you are silent. It makes it to where there is a void. There's a hole, there's a gap, a place that was filled by you that is no longer. And if you refuse to back away and you try to stay there when you're not wanted at the moment, it will cause them to actually forget. They will just want to get away from you. That will be their only goal. They'll feel like they're trapped, and they'll be putting even more energy to getting away from you, which you definitely don't want. You want them to feel like they're free, because that's the only way you can rip the Band-Aid off and actually start the process of them being able to look at this and maybe have some doubt and see that maybe they made a mistake and that they miss you. But if you stay and you keep pestering and talking to them, you are only making them want to get away from you more. And those of you who are going through this and have tried that, you know I'm right about that. And so I hope you can see that that's not going to be helpful, that silence is actually, even though it feels passive, it feels like you're doing nothing, it's actually the most attractive thing you could do after a breakup. Number 4, people worry that they will think that you don't care. Well, most of the time after a breakup, you've already told them that you love them, you want to save this, and you've asked them to reconsider, and they've said no. And so the question becomes, well, okay, what if you tell them again that you care and you want this relationship? And then you tell them again. At what point do you say, okay, they know now that I care, so I can stop telling them? So it's kind of a bit of a logical problem in that they already know that you don't want the breakup. But them knowing that you want to be with them is not going to make them want to be with you. It's sort of like if you were out somewhere and someone who was just very unattractive to your eye came over and started telling you what a wonderful girlfriend or boyfriend that they would be to you. That wouldn't change the fact that you were very unattracted to them. You were not attracted to them. And so you aren't really interested in how they would be good to you as a partner or significant other, because they have to pass the eye test. I mean, that's just human nature. And then there's emotional attraction. And if emotional attraction has fallen like it has now, then it's not a contest of how much you love them. You could love them more than any human being in the world. It doesn't mean that they want to be with you. They want to be with someone that they are attracted to, emotionally speaking, and their attraction has fallen right now. I'm not saying you can't get it back. As a matter of fact, my channel is dedicated to helping you re-attract this person, and part of that begins, significantly so, with you showing dignity, backing away, giving them the breakup, and in some ways letting them feel like you are breaking up with them, that you are not going to try, that you're going to be silent, let them miss you, let them have to remember the history that you two have together without you being there to make it easy for them to just move on from you. And that's actually what happens, which brings me to the next point, the next question. What if they move on? Well, you aren't just going to be there around them and going, no, don't you move on. I'm right here. I'm watching you. I'm right here. You can't move on. That's not how it works. That will just make them run from you and try to move on harder and faster and sooner. And I'm aware that faster and sooner mean the same thing. The bottom line is you can't control this other person. And when you try to control them, they will actually try to break free from you even harder. It will seem unattractive because they will feel that you must not be very attractive if you have to try to hold on to them so tightly and won't let them go and move on with their life or whatever they want to do. Now, they may think that, and that's the thing. Just because your ex thinks right now they want to move on and they don't want to be with you, that does not mean that they will not change their mind in the future. Because if you remember, in the recent past, they wanted to be with you. But you didn't say, well, they'll just always want to be with me. Because if you said that, then at this point, you're looking like you were wrong. But you would be just as wrong to say, well, since they think they don't want to be with me today, it means they won't want to be with me next month or next week. Silence is what is actually going to do the most to prevent them from moving on, because if they aren't feeling that you aren't letting them go, if you're pestering and continuing to talk to them and just won't leave them alone, then they will try to move on. They will put more energy into going away from you. But if you don't do that, then first of all, they're not having to put more energy into going away from you, which means there's actually a smaller space that they have to travel, emotionally speaking, or get to actually consider getting back together with you. And if they can miss you day after day, your silence can cause them to miss you. That's the fuel you need to get some momentum, to get them moving towards you. And that can cause them to reach out to you, have a connection with you, want to meet up with you, and that gives you the opportunity to reattract them. But pestering, begging, pleading, yelling, getting emotional, continuing to text them because you think that will prevent them from moving on, as though you are the watchful eye. I see you. Don't you move on. It doesn't work that way. Your silence actually is more likely to prevent them from moving on than your presence and you being vocal. Remember to get my new $7 reunion blueprint at reunionblueprint.com. It's a great guide, the basic foundation for getting your ex back, and things I don't talk about normally in my videos on YouTube. Silence is powerful. Trust it, embrace it, and you will give yourself a better chance to get back with the one you love. This has been Coach Lee, and as always, thank you for watching.